Welcome to the Master Dealmaker's Secrets podcast. And now, here's sales growth strategist, John Blake.
Welcome to Master Dealmaker's Secrets. I'm John Blake. This is episode 52, and today I am particularly pumped because we have got a mentor of mine, James Schramko, on the call, and I'm really excited to have him with us because he knows so much about business, about team building, and there's a plethora of things that we can learn from him. He's got author of a particularly long-standing and successful podcast, over 700 episodes at Super Fast Business. So yeah, really looking forward to getting inside his world and finding out some wisdom that he can share with us today. So really looking forward to that. But first, if you've got lead flow and you're looking to convert more of those leads into sales, head over to johnblakeaudio.com and get your free 12-minute audio training where I show you the precise strategy that you can use to double sales with your existing leads. This is the exact strategy that I teach the high-ticket clients that I work with over a 12-month period to really get things moving in their business and generate some quick wins. And it will work consistently once you've got it happening in your business, and that's what you want, something that is going to continually work for you. So head over to johnblakeaudio.com, download my rapid audio training, and get the PDF guide that has the exact templates, exactly what to email, exactly what to say when you actually get through to someone, exactly what to say when you get someone's voicemail, and when to call and when to email. So put that into use at johnblakeaudio.com. Okay, welcome to Master Dealmaker's Secrets. I'm John Blake, and it is episode 52 today. I'm so pumped because I have got a particularly high-profile guest with me, James Schramko. So let me give you a little bit of an intro on James before we welcome him in. James is the author of Work Less, Make More, which is one of the best business books that I've actually ever read, and I've read a stack of books on business and sales. He's the host of Super Fast Business podcast. There's well over 700 episodes of that, which is a feat in and of itself, as well as co-host on Think, Act, Get, Kicking Back and Sales Marketing Profit podcast. He's a master at so many aspects of business, including marketing, team building, business strategy, personal productivity, and sales. And he's almost, if not more of a surfing fanatic than I am, which is actually saying something. So, good morning, James. How are you going?
I'm doing great, thanks. I think I'm going to use that introduction in my next book. That sounds, I sound amazing. No, it's weird hearing that stuff about yourself because, we're cocooned from, what other people think about us sometimes.
Yeah, well, this is, I've been, part of your Super Fast program and, but this is the first time that we've ever chatted, which is interesting, even though we've sort of chatted backwards and forwards on email and all the rest of it. So, mate, I've got some questions that I'm sure that the listeners will be interested in hearing because you've got such a long and pretty diverse background in terms of business. So the first question I was going to ask is, in the early part of your career, you've had a lot of success in the automotive industry, and you ran dealerships like Mercedes and BMW. And I know that when you started studying the great marketing minds of the world like Jay Abraham, and you started applying some of that direct response philosophy in the luxury car dealerships, that you started to see some really good results. But I'm really curious as to, you spent a pretty large chunk of your career in that space. What are some of the big lessons that you learned in automotive sales and marketing that are still cornerstones of how you run your businesses today?
Well, there's so many. It's kind of funny because I learned a lot about selling through that process, and then I stacked on new skills and disciplines, leadership, for example, and financial things. And then as I was undertaking my online studies, I was incorporating those into the dealership. And then I was incorporating what I'd learned in my dealership into my online business. And I'd have to say there's a huge overlap because you're dealing with most of the same elements. You're dealing with a marketplace. You're dealing with customers. You have strategic stuff, tactical stuff. You got financial stuff. So it was really just doing exactly the same thing. And I remember, this might illustrate it. I remember sitting in my sales manager's office, or which was next to mine. I was the general manager, and I was having a chat to him. And then I thought, wouldn't it be good if he was the sales manager of my business and not the dealership here? And then I looked out and I thought, I wonder if those salespeople were selling my product and not the Mercedes-Benz product, and if the people upstairs were marketing my website and not the Mercedes website, what would that look like? It really was just a direct drag and drop. And a few years later, I ended up replicating most of the functions of what a Mercedes dealership has, but in my own business, with way less overheads and way less stress and a much higher profit margin. And there was actually a point where my online business database was bigger than the Mercedes dealership that I worked at, which at that time had around a $50 million revenue, the dealership was. And my actual profit exceeded what the dealership made. And I had almost the same number of people. So it was really interesting. There was 73 staff in the dealership when I left, and I ended up building a business with around 65 people for myself.
Yeah, right. So the moment, I can't let that go past. The moment when you realised that the profit in your business was bigger than the profit in the dealership, that must have been a pretty serious fist pump moment.
Yes, it really is a lesson in history and leverage, because the thing about the automotive industry, it's pretty old. It's over 100 years old. So people have come into that industry, and most of the things that have been tried. I mean, I'm sure 100 years ago when they were selling cars, they were pioneering stuff. And so it becomes a bit commoditized, and it becomes very competitive, and you get old second, third, fourth generation people in the business. And with the online business, it's like fresh and new. The internet really only started 30 years ago. So it was really interesting to see the difference in when you go from a worn out, tired industry and apply the principles that are there into a brand new sort of Wild West industry. Even the most basic things worked quite well in the beginning of the online journey, and now they're becoming commoditized, and we're seeing a shift, and you have to step up the game a little bit. So that's been quite interesting to observe.
And I would imagine that it would have been so refreshing being able to have so much more agility in your online business, as opposed to a business where habits and the norms are so entrenched in automotive, where trying to do something different would have been like trying to, get blood out of a stone.
It was so hard. I wanted to do risk reversal offers. I wanted to improve we were doing product launches. I was taking Jeff Walker's product launch formula and I applied it to the dealership, and it worked really well.
Awesome.
And so I was able to do some things they didn't have. I built a 10,000 email database from scratch in the dealership by using a giveaway contest or a guessing contest. It was like a winner weekend in a Mercedes-Benz, and you had to fill in the blanks. It was like Mercedes B blank NZ. You had to fill in the missing letter for a chance to win, and you had to put your name and email address and phone number for us to let you know if you won. And I was really progressive with the website. I mean, I was bidding on Google AdWords for the phrase Mercedes-Benz in 2005 or 2006, right? I was really early to that advertising party. I was setting up specific landing pages on the website for a particular model. So once I started segmenting, I'd advertise for a Mercedes-Benz AMG C32, and then I would land that person on a page that was Mercedes-Benz AMG C32, and it had a video of a C32, and then it encouraged a test drive of a C32. So I was doing this really good advertising that was just totally unheard of. And I remember I had this massive fight with the owner because in 2005, I wanted to put the website address on the number plate frames, and he was very resistant. He just didn't get it. He didn't see why that would be important. And I pushed for it, and I got it put on pens that we'd give away and stuff. So I recognized the internet was going to change the game. And here we are now. We've got companies like Tesla who do hundreds of thousands of pre-orders without even having a dealership network. So, they are on borrowed ground. They're literally going to be the blockbuster, these dealerships. And, these big ones go broke as well. You've had bankruptcies from the very large ones. We've got automotive dealer manufacturers or brands being shut down in Australia right now.
Yeah, a really big one.
Yeah, so you've got this changing landscape, and I was quick to recognise, I really need to understand this online thing, and the freedom and the choice to be able to sell anything to anywhere in the world online it just blew my mind. And I imagine that's probably partly what people got excited about with things like cryptocurrency, where they figured they can destabilize and get out of the old sort of broken financial institutions. And we don't know how that story ends, but we do know that the online game has really changed the way that we buy things and sell things.
Yeah, it certainly has. I mean, like to have been able to be that granular in your marketing back in 2004. I guess one thing you were giving the people, serving up ads that gave them the specific thing that they wanted. But the second thing is that it wouldn't have been as expensive as trying to bid for like a really broad keyword.
You could bid on a broad keyword. I could bid on Mercedes-Benz, and I think it was like $7 or $8 back then.
Yeah, right.
Because there was no competition. No one was doing this. It was brand new. And as I kept discovering the website efficiencies, I had some hilarious scenarios, like the agency who was providing the websites. One day I wanted them to install Google Analytics onto our website, and they wanted to charge me about $4,000 for that. I remember they charged the dealer network about $25,000 for a one-page landing page that just had the name of the dealers on it for a weekend promotion they were running, and it didn't even capture email addresses. And as I was learning about online marketing, and I could see this grandiose stupidity from the big corporates, I just thought, oh my God. So I was just like David, getting out there and outmaneuvering Goliath. I can do this myself. I'll just go and find a product that I can sell, and I'll build my own machine that can work 24/7. I mean, a website is a 24/7 sales rep, and it never asks for a pay rise, and it doesn't try and bury deals in the top drawer to try and roll them into the next month if they miss its target. Like, it's a great machine.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that you should say that. I remember, because my background is in action sports. I sold some of the pretty much, I think I was involved in almost all of the top surfing brands over the years in one way, shape, or form, either from a coaching perspective or actually being their representative. And I remember having a conversation with the marketing manager of one of the bigger brands, and I said to him, you could look in the latest surfing magazine, and then you could go down to the beach and you could ask anyone at the beach who surfs to describe the latest ad from your company, and none of them would be able to do it. And he looked at me like I was eating spiders, and he looked at me like he wanted to punch me. And the idea of, I said to them, you need to start collecting. Not just, rather than selling to retailers, you need to start collecting email addresses and contact details from the people who are buying your stuff, because that's going to be the future. And this guy, he just didn't get it. He was just looking at me like, no, I just want to run another double page spread with a guy doing an aerial. That's it.
That is crazy. I mean,
yeah. And this was back in 2004, 2005, so similar kind of, I guess, blockage that I was encountering, just different industry.
Yeah, quite a few of them have embraced it. And in the meantime, plenty of those clothing stores have gone belly up. And,
yeah.
Even just for my own hobby, I put up a website in the surf industry and we get 20 or 30,000 visits a month to that. And we have an email database. And hopefully a surf company will just come along and buy my site from me one day because they'll see that I've built what they should have and I can reach their customers more easily than they can.
Yeah. And you've been able to establish that just in the last sort of 12, 18 months.
Yeah, it's just a little side project my team work on, and it's a great way for us to stay up to date with surfing news and to keep on top of the equipment. Yeah. But we often ranking for all the new products. It's funny, when I go out in the surf, I can identify almost all the different brands and surfboards because, the companies are really savvy now. They're making these little YouTube clips and edits. Like half the surfers on Hawaii have their own YouTube channel these days. They've embraced it and they're cutting out the middleman to some extent. They can command big sponsorships because they've got the eyeballs.
Yep. They've got the following. How many surfboards do you have at the moment, James?
It's probably not wise to publish that publicly. Do we break it down by in which house? Look, I think I have. I've got 4 in my Philippines house, and I've got probably about 30, or maybe a dozen or so at each of my Australia places, and I've had plenty though. I probably had 100, but I've bought and sold them. They're very liquid. It's amazing how easy it is to sell a surfboard.
Yeah, isn't it?
When you unbelievable. And the buying and selling side of things has never been an issue for me. I've bought and sold for a living. And that's, by the way, another huge fundamental skill that I took from that industry is I'm a good buyer.
Yeah.
Because we had to buy someone's car from them in order for them to buy the next one from us.
Yeah, of course.
Whereas a lot of salespeople have to sell, but they don't have to buy.
Yeah, exactly.
So I really sharpened my buying skills. So I don't mind trading. I've even made money on some of my boards. They're so liquid. Like it could be gone today if I decided so.
Yeah. No, it's good like that. You can turn them over.
How many surfboards do you have?
I think I've got about 12 last time I counted.
Yeah. Well, I'm settling down. I'm slowing down a bit now because I've figured out what I like, and I had to just try a lot to understand it. And also, coming from the automotive industry, I probably drove a brand new car home from about March 1995 through to July 2008. I had a new car just about every night.
Yeah, right. Awesome.
I've tried so many different things. I'm good at understanding the differences between them, and I can adjust quickly.
Yeah.
So I can ride anything.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. You've certainly got the bug. So I guess, on that, that lifestyle side of your journey, you've made a pretty significant shift in your business several years ago where you had a really big team and your business was a lot bigger to the business that you've got now. And I'm guessing that's the ethos behind the work less, make more book. But I'm curious, was there a particular moment that you can recall or an event that was the catalyst for that change, or was it just something that you sort of gradually grew into?
I think like a lot of things, it was a bunch of things that happened and that add up to a sum. But one of the most important things was, in terms of what I sell, I really have to believe in what I sell. I need to be able to help someone be better off, because that's my core belief in selling.
Yep.
That I'm helping someone be better off. And when it comes to SEO, we were doing a very, very good job with that business. And I was, again, observing changes in the marketplace. it wasn't going to be a future that worked the same. Like a lot of our competitors got wiped out with the big blog slapdowns because they were just putting links on blogs and pointing it to people's sites. So from a future perspective, I had concerns that SEO will change in the nature of how it works. We had our own blog network, and I had made an early decision to figure out how to get people results without needing that blog network. I did a constraints exercise. What if we can't have the blogs? How do we do it? And we built up a lot of social profiles over time and found other ways to do it. And my concern was that will no longer be as effective either, and there'll be other things coming along. So that was one thing in my mind. And the second challenge that I had was the business was going so well for one of my customers who started from scratch with me. Like he literally was in a conference room where I presented in Dubai in 2009. And he came on board with me as a customer, and he started following what I told him to do, and he built his agency up, and then he became the single biggest customer of the business, and he was buying the most stock from us. He was buying about half the available supply that we had. And so I had this scenario, which I call a big fish scenario, where we start to become a little bit risky with having so much of our business with just one person. And I said to him, look, as a student, I would tell you to replace us if you can. If you know what we do and you can build your own team and you're patient and you want to invest some money, you could build out your own team and get supply. And as a customer of mine, I would say you'd be crazy not to buy my business if I'd sell it to you, because you'll make a 50% margin on every dollar you spend with us, and you'll be able to actually fund the business purchase just from future consumption if you plan to continue what you're doing. And we found a way that we could make it work where I was able to sell the business to him. And with that, I think there was 38 people in that particular team. And then we had, on the other side of the fence, I had a website development team. And I got to say, I found the website development business quite challenging. It's hard work. Developers are interesting humans, very code oriented, and they're not as good at communicating as people from the sales and marketing world. And the customers can also be quite relentless, because all the customer can see is their page. They can't see the code. They don't understand what goes into it, or the development, or the hours. And again, future spotting, I could see there will be a consolidation of website development. I could see, I was into website development early, and I went through the whole WordPress thing. And then I thought, I don't think people will actually be using that in the future. We're seeing a lot of people building strong presences on their social media platforms. And then there's some really, really good tools now that just negate the need to have an in-house web developer or pay some external company a fortune to keep your website up. Because back in the day, remember I was telling you about how much that agency would charge me just to put a piece of code on the site.
Yeah, crazy.
Websites used to cost $20,000 or $30,000, and then I was able to sell websites for $1,500 or $500, and then I could see that people are just going to rent a tool by the month and not even have to worry about hosting and all the rest of it. So that's where it's gone, and I'm heavily now invested in the next generation after WordPress, which is software as a service that just takes care of all that tech challenge.
Yeah.
So that's a reason why I sold that business, and I had a perfect fit buyer for that as well, where one of my customers is very good at coding and didn't have a team. And I said, how come I make more money from my web business and I don't even know how to code a line of code than you do? And I'll tell you why, because you do all the stuff yourself and I do none of it, and I've got a team, and as long as I can sell more than the team costs, I make a profit. That if you had my team and your technical knowledge, I think you'd have a great business. And so he took on that team, and we found a way to put that deal together. So right in line with your Master Dealmaker series, I think my building and selling of my businesses were definitely some of the biggest learning curves for me in terms of deal making. because there's a lot of skin in the game in that scenario.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you've preempted one of the questions I was going to ask, and you've actually described them. I guess both of those businesses and the process in moving them on really well. I mean, was there a particular upshot that you learned from both of those deals?
Well, yes. I mean, in preparation for that, I went and researched a lot in buying and selling of online web properties. I read several books on the topic. It's the same process I went through when I started selling. I read seven books on selling.
Yep.
Kept reading books on selling, and same when I became a sales manager. I read every book I could buy in the Australian Institute of Management bookstore on sales management, and then I implemented. Same for buying and selling. But you do go through a phase of wondering if you should sell or not. I try and play mental games, like I place myself in the opposite shoes, because I have a high degree of empathy and I can really get out of my body and into the mind of the other person.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, would I buy this business? And would I be excited about that? And sometimes you can convince yourself that you should probably just keep it. I definitely do that with surfboards.
Yeah.
I look at my surfboard and think, if I took this down to the store to sell and I walked in tomorrow, would I buy it? And I'm like, yeah, I'd buy it. So why would I sell it? Okay, I'll keep it. Save myself the effort. So it is hard, and often there are niggles. There's always little 12th hour challenges that pop up with these transactions. One thing that I definitely learned is how lawyers work.
Yeah.
And when it comes to contract law, generally when people involve a lawyer, their lawyer is going to try and bias the deal in terms of their customer, because that's what they see their job as. And quite often you get to the point where your counterparty's lawyer will actually try and pull the rug on the deal or undo it because they're just being too brutal. And that requires some finessing. And the other thing I discovered is it's usually better to create the contract yourself. And then if they want to make changes or so forth, then get them to tell you what they'd like to change. Don't let their lawyer start rewording it, because it becomes a lot more expensive if you go down that path.
So like have a heads of agreement first and then work from there?
Definitely have dialogue before you get all legal, so that everyone thinks they know what's happening, and then get the simplest possible agreement formulated that covers that. And then when their lawyer starts trying to bias the deal and make you take all the risk, you might have to put your foot down. As I did in one case, I just said, look, your lawyer's trying to protect you, and I get that, but he's also making sure you never buy my business, because I would not sell it on those terms. Yeah. And then I have a very good lawyer, and fortunately for me, she phoned up their lawyer. Their lawyer was trying to use a different agreement, a wrong type of agreement for the type of transaction that was happening, and she tuned him up a bit, and then it was all able to go through. So these things can happen right at the end. Like, you've already mentally gone through with the sale, you have committed yourself to the agreement, and then these little niggles come up, stupid stuff, and they can sometimes rock the boat. And I've often found the same thing happening when I buy a property. Often you agree on a price, you go in to sign up, and then they start doing some silly private auction thing and trying to ramp up the price and unsettle you, and you've already mentally owning it, and you just end up paying more because they've got you in a position of weakness and those sort of things. So I'd say you have to, if you're selling a business, continue running it as if you are keeping it and never let go. Because as soon as you relax or you think it's sold before the deal is done or before the money hits your bank account, there's a good chance something will come up to destabilize it.
Yeah, love that. It's like, keep up the momentum regardless of whether you choose to sell it or not.
Yes, and we used to have a saying in the motor industry that we wouldn't celebrate a sale until we saw tail lights.
I love that.
That's like the sweetest moment of the whole transaction is when they get in, they've given you the bank check, they've got their keys, and then they drive out the driveway, and then the little tail light press as they get to the driveway exit.
Yeah.
and the little red light comes on, and then there's a gap in the traffic, and then they drive off.
Yeah.
At that moment, you've earned your commission.
Yeah.
I've seen anything can happen prior to that. I mean, I've had cars stolen the night before delivery that we couldn't deliver. Like, anything can and will happen.
Yeah, it's so true. So true. So have there been any deals that you've been involved with that went pear-shaped where there were big lessons to be learned? Because, I often say there's as if not more to be learned from the deals that we don't do and the mistakes that we make from the when things are going really well.
I had a couple of really savage transactions that didn't go ahead when I was early on when I was, just for perspective, I was about 23 years old when I started selling BMW. And I remember I had this old school friend of mine had popped by. I recognized him from school. He wasn't a friend. He was kind of more like a bully who used to beat me up, but I recognized him.
Yep.
And, he came from a rich family. He already had a new car when he was at school, it's like, and he came into the BMW dealership and was interested in a convertible. And I went through the options with him, and then I signed up the contract, and he paid a deposit, and the car arrived from the distributor, and we were preparing it for delivery. And then some guy came down and from our sister branch up the road and took it. And I said, "What's going on?" And they said, this guy's he's a friend of Anthony. Anthony was the son of the dealership owner. Because he wants to do the deal up there. I'm like, you got to be kidding me! Like I've done all the work. I've done the prep. I've got the deposit. I've done the contract, and the car's here. He goes, "Yeah, too bad." And they took the deal off me. They didn't pay me commission, and it was just like that was really just one of the incidents that helped me understand when you're dealing with big corporations or politics or family businesses or insider trading, you're going to get the blunt end of it. Business is full of these selfish people, really, whether it's an Enron or whatever, you get shafted. I'd often be driving home from the end of month sales, and then the head office would call. When I was at Mercedes-Benz, head office would call and say, "Listen, we need to there's a boat arriving next week, and we need to count the cars on that boat in your numbers for the month." And I'd say, "But they're not even in the country. How can you count them in the month?" They say, "Yeah, we need to report that to head office because we're a bit behind in our targets. Thanks for understanding." And I don't understand. I just don't understand why you'd count those in the month, like they're next month's deals. And they'd say, "Yeah, appreciate it." And then they'd hang up, and then they would just report the numbers. And then the next month would come, and you're already behind like 12 cars. And now you've still got to do all the work. And it would just incense me. Like really, it would drive me crazy. And I think this is one of the huge motivators for me to get the hell out of this crazy world where, you've got big corporate number fudging. You've got selfish family operators who just line their own pockets and don't mind cutting you out of it without any regard to you, just a cog in their machine. I dare say they wouldn't even remember your name 10 years later. So I used to just take it so personally at the time. I had other lessons too, but one of the ones that comes to mind is when I used to have this quote book, like a carbonized paper book when I very first started, and someone would come in and I'd test drive them and I'd find out what they've got and I'd write up their order and a quote, and I'd tear off the top sheet and I'd give that to them, and then they'd hop in their car and then I'd never hear from them again. And when I did finally chase them down, I found out they bought a car from the dealer down the road, and they were just taking my quote and giving it to the next dealer and saying, "Beat that and you've got a deal." And I just felt so violated. It's like I realized that I'm giving them a shopping docket.
Yeah.
And so after that, I took an innovation from a friend of mine who worked in a video store industry. Back then, there used to be video stores, right, with cassette tapes and stuff.
Yeah.
Can you believe it?
I remember.
And they used to distribute their price list on purple paper. And the reason for that was you can't photocopy it. If you photocopy purple paper, it goes black. So I got this dark blue paper.
Yeah.
And I wrote down my notes on that. And I wrote on the top, personal notes. And now when the customers, they're like, oh, okay, can you just give me a copy of that? Look, I'm so sorry, but I won't be able to photocopy this. It's just going to go black. These are just my personal notes. I'm happy to put it on a contract, though. Well, I'd say order at the time.
Yeah.
Happy to pop it on an order if you want. So this was just my learning phase of the way that people buy. And people who buy cars are just as bad as people who sell cars, if not worse. I mean, even reverends lied to me about their trade-in price. They have no regard for, no respect or no appreciation of the good salespeople out there who are just doing what they do for a living and are quite often on a performance pay system and don't even get paid a fraction of what the customer would think they get paid. Most people think a car salesperson in a luxury brand is going to be rich, but the reality is they might be delivering a car for $100.
Yeah. If there's that, depending on how much profit's left in it.
And often it's not, especially if the salesperson is not any good.
Yeah.
Or if the dealership does stupid things like advertise full-page spreads saying they're going to do the best deals in town or beat any offer. I mean, they just create their own drama, these dealerships.
Yeah. So it sounds like you learned a lot from that, but you don't necessarily miss it very much.
Yeah, and I definitely, I don't use discounts or sales or Black Fridays or anything in my business now. I really go with value over trying to get people on price incentive. And I will focus more on making sure that I'm getting the customers real feedback rather than them pretending and taking away their thing to do something else. So I guess I became more of a challenger type salesperson. And since that, there's been quite a bit of research on it, and it's now, I think, probably one of the best-selling sales books on the planet.
Yeah, I talk about it all the time.
Right. So I was the one who was sort of asking the customer, like, what are you really thinking here? And, if they weren't in a position to order, then I'd just make sure we agree on what the next step is and make sure I've done everything to provide them what they need to be in a good place to make a decision that makes sense for them.
Yeah. So sometimes one of the most groundbreaking things I can do for a client is to give them a nice way to say no where the person they're talking to feels like they were served.
Yes.
It's like, if they're not going to buy from you, then, at least point them in the right direction and give them some value because you know more about the process than what they do.
That's it. And once you've sold just 5 cars, you've probably sold more cars than some people will buy in their lifetime.
Yeah, exactly. So, so the other question I was going to ask you is that, with all of the different options that people have got available to them online, the list of rabbit holes you can get lost in, with marketing is literally, massive, from the type of CRM that you should have. There's all the social media platforms and chatbots and funnels and automatic follow-ups and sequencing and, all that sort of stuff, and the average business, really isn't across much of that at all. They've probably got a website. They might be dealing with a digital agency or someone that's helping them with their online advertising. In your mind and in your experience, what do you believe are the 3 core sales and marketing fundamentals that every business needs to have in place if they want to build a business that serves them financially, but also allows them, lifestyle balance?
Well, I usually start with the conversion process because without that, there's no transition between a prospect and a customer. So I'd say that's the first thing to figure out is, what is your offer? How can you show someone they'll be better off?
Yep.
So that's like that's the middle piece.
Yep.
Once you've figured that out, then it's about getting some kind of awareness to have people see your offer.
Yep.
I'm cautious to use words like drive because they still imply push. You can attract, for example, but you need some kind of an awareness method.
Yeah.
And so you've got now people are aware of you, they're able to see your offer. And then, of course, you have to deliver. You've got to have that ongoing relationship because as a seasoned sales professional knows, that's really the start of the relationship. And if you can increase the lifetime customer value with repeat transactions, recurring transactions, recommendations on top of, that, referrals, those sort of things, the value of that customer can really rapidly increase. So you don't need to put all your time on awareness, which is where 99.99% of online marketers get stuck. It's all about awareness. But if you can make a really compelling offer that is obvious to the customer and puts them in a scenario where of all the things they could do, like you are the obvious choice, and then you can focus on making sure they get a great experience and that your promises are met and exceeded, then you will have a great business.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And because there's so many people, like you say, that focus on awareness, and even probably the next biggest group of people that focus on conversion, but not many people are talking about retention and the experience in terms of delivery that would cause somebody to, one, want to hang around, and two, want to recommend you to other people within their network. And that's in the challenge of sale, the customer experience in inverted commas, very clearly states that, it's, what is it that you can do to help me throughout the process such that, I'm protected, I'm informed, you help me avoid making mistakes on an ongoing basis beyond the point where I made the initial purchase with you. So,
yeah, it could be summarized in one word: care.
Yeah.
And I think Jay Abraham calls it custodian. Whichever one of those you want, I think that's often the missing piece of the puzzle. I spoke to someone yesterday who was interested in me helping them.
Mm-hmm.
And I recommended a solution to this person that was 10 times less than the solution that he'd applied for. And that's because I care about his outcomes and I want the right solution for him at the right time, because he will be in a position to take a 10 times more solution down the track if he goes well with the first part. But if he went on to the 10 times solution now, he's not going to be happy and I'm not going to be happy. So
no, true.
A lot of greedy marketers will just take the money. And that's really been, I have this single point of differentiation over most of my peers in the online world, and that is integrity.
Yeah.
Because that's like, it sticks out. People can recognize it when they've had the opposite of it.
Yeah. And so many people have. I tell people that that's my number one competition. My number one competition isn't other people that do things that I do. It's the last advisor that ripped the client off. And it doesn't have to be someone who was talking to them about, sales or sales process or conversion. It could be anyone. Once people have that bad taste, they tend to tar everyone with that same brush.
Oh, and it causes them to ask certain questions in the process that you can quickly identify. Okay, so seems like you've had a bad experience before. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
It's like we used to have this funny line in the car industry. Like the salespeople did some quite naughty things as well, right? But, when you were valuing a trade-in, often the car had been in an accident. The average car in Australia is in a pretty decent accident once every 10 years on average, right?
Yeah. So
if you have a 10-year-old car, there's a good chance it's had a good hit and there's a few doors or a boot or a bonnet has been resprayed. And the valuer knows it's been in an accident, and then they'll put it on the report and the salesperson knows. And sometimes if the salesperson wanted to try and devalue the trade-in in the eyes of the customer to try and get them to move their position, they'd ask something like, so was anyone hurt in the accident? And it was a bit cheeky.
Yeah.
Now, what I used to do is not mention the accident because I felt that would impact their pride.
Mm-hmm.
And I also wanted them to feel like I wasn't devaluing their trade-in because, the other dealers would mention the accident and I was the only one who wouldn't. And they might feel that we've missed it or haven't taken it into account, and in some way they're kind of ripping us off.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't hurt the chance of sale.
Yeah, definitely. So, just one really one more sort of question before we wrap up. The 3 books that you find yourself either consistently referring to clients or giving away, what would be your top 3?
Oh, I definitely give away my book the most, and that's because I started just giving it to every single person who joins my membership. I never advertised that or promised it, but I thought it was a nice thing to hand sign it, put it in an envelope and send it myself. So I started doing that a while back. So I definitely go through a few.
Yep, I can certainly second that. It's it's a bloody good book.
I seem to give away the one-page marketing plan a fair bit. My customer, Alan Dibb, has a very high-selling book on Amazon for marketing, and it's a pretty good little compilation and a concise marketing planner book. I give it to people who I feel might be sort of a more early stages of their own business. I give it to my sister or my kids or friends who visit. I have a stack of them. Alan just sends me the books. He's a really good guy, right? Super generous. He gave a book to everyone who came to my Super Fast Business Live event. I had a couple of boxes left over. I gave them away, and then he sends me more. In terms of what I've been recommending my clients, and I made a video about this recently, I really liked a book called The 16-Word Sales Letter.
Oh, I read that. I saw that video and I read it straight away. It's awesome. Right. It's so good.
Right, and one of my customers created a tool for me and put it on my website, and it's the 16-word letter sales framework that you can just fill in the gaps and then generate a copy and paste text. And I use that, and my team use that now for emails, Facebook posts, videos, scripts, sales pages, reviews, etc. So that's been something that we've really implemented wholeheartedly and gotten results. And one of my new clients just started on Sunday. On Monday, I had a little chat to him and I sent him to the tool, and he put up a site that afternoon, and he's already converting at 11% now on his $49 recurring product.
Oh, wow.
So it's very easy to use. We put it on superfastbusiness.com/tools. And so that book, I like it because it's actionable, and having read every copywriting book I can get my grubby mitts on, it's much shorter than most, and it's got a good collection of some of the things you need to consider if you're going to make a persuasive offer. And I'm sure you would have appreciated the framework as well.
Oh, I loved it. I mean, I've been studying copywriting for years. I've got John Carlton stuff. I've got Eugene Schwartz's stuff. It's like, Pete Godfrey. I've been studying it. Dan Kennedy for a long time, and I read that and I was just like, wow. Like,
there's a lot of those books are longish and hard to read or hard to do. But the other thing is I recognise a lot of the people endorsing Aldo's book. I even coach one or two of them. So I just asked them on my next coaching call, like, what do you think? And they said, real deal. This guy gets the results. You can't argue the results.
Especially when English is his second language. I was just look at that and went, whoa, okay. Imagine trying to create a tool like that in like Brazilian or, Portuguese. It would just be like, whoa, crazy. Awesome. So, mate, this is going to be super valuable. I can't wait to get it up and out there to the listeners. But have you got any other resources? So we've talked about Super Fast Business Podcast is 700 and how many right now?
I've recorded about 723 episodes on that so far.
Brilliant, mate. That's massive. And any other resources other than the book that you think would be worthwhile the crew checking out?
No, I think we've mentioned the Challenger Sales Method was one of the most interesting sales books I've read since Spin Selling.
Yeah, and
I think the website and the book. I mean, that's a good starting point. I don't want to overload people. Let's keep it simple.
No, well, I mean, you've got so much value packed into so many of those different podcasts that you've done. So that's not people's normal starting point for your stuff anyway, isn't it?
It seems to be when I ask people where they found out about me, a lot of them do say podcast. Yeah. Although I'd have to say podcast is really a great conversion tool. I've put a lot more effort lately into promoting each podcast episode with sort of supporting short videos and social media, because that's where you get real leverage in a podcast, is just growing a subscriber base as well.
Yeah.
Because there's over 700,000 podcasts. Like when I started podcasting, I was always in the top 10 in business, at least in Australia. You know, it's much, 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 much harder to get top ranking in 2020 than it was in 2009, right?
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, there's heaps of them. Well, mate, thanks so much again for being on. And like I said, I'm sure that, you know, people that are going to be listening to this are going to get a stack of value, mate. So, you know, very much appreciated.
Thank you, John.
You've been listening to Master Dealmaker's Secrets with John Blake. Subscribe to get more in-depth strategies to maximize your sales process with new episodes every week. And double your inquiry to sale conversion with the lead flow you already have. Go to johnblakeaudio.com for his exclusive free no-fluff audio training and companion PDF guide.